This next section, Johnny's going to like, because it is, and thank you for the super chat contribution again. And think about the social media warnings on any content questioning establishment narratives. Oh my God. And now CJ, it's the same. Corporate plutocracy rules for the neo-nobility. And let me tell you something. It is disgusting. I'm surprised that we don't have a warning down below in our video today. It's the first time ever. They always would be putting up disclaimers. Today, they decided not to do it. I don't know why, but it is crazy. And the way they do that, the way they kind of set out the narrative for the plebs, for the people who don't pay much attention. Oh, like, this is bullshit. This is conspiracy theory. The real people, the AP have called it. And we have all this stuff going on right now. Okay. By the way, another super chat contribution from Cisada or Sakata. Zuckerberg, Dorsey, big tech election interference is the real scandal of this election, along with the mainstream media complicity. Because the mainstream media is all about it. They were in it. They were in there talking their talking points. They were lying the whole time, fam. Every single time that Chris Cuomo said, oh, well, we're waiting for more mail-ins to come in here. Mail-ins favor Democrats. I wanted to throw up because that's a lie. They don't favor Democrats. Historically, they favor older people, handicapped people who tend to be more conservative. End of story. The next part we're going to get into real quick. Did you want to say anything else on that, fam?
No, go ahead.
Okay, so if you want to talk about a guy who knows what's up, Bill Binney told us a long time ago that Russiagate was bullshit. He was the first one to tell us this is an ex-NSA dude who's got an organization of ex-people working in the intelligence community that are out there telling the truth because they know how manipulative the CIA, the FBI are, because they're filled with bureaucrats, a bunch of people who were not elected, who were not chosen, who were just appointed, that really make all the decisions. Now, Bill Binney talks about this next one right over here. He's been saying the whole time, it didn't come from Russia. It wasn't a hack. It was a hard drive that went in there. Somebody went in there, downloaded that stuff, and handed it off. Well, the FBI now, fam, has found files on Seth Rich. So bottom line, listen to what our boy Bill Binney says. And we're going to get him on the show. Bill Binney's been on Action for Assange. Bill Binney's an awesome character. We're going to get him on this show. But look at what he says about Seth Rich. And I got to say this to all you people out there who said we were a bunch of conspiracy theories. Shame on you. It was Seth Rich. End of story. We have the proof. You want to bury it? That's okay. I'm going to be screaming it loud. I'm going to be screaming it proud. It was Seth Rich who gave the information to WikiLeaks. Here's Bill Binney.
Thank you, Dennis. I'd like to address two basic things here. First, I'd like to say I've been reading about the case that Ty Clevenger, who's a lawyer representing Ed Butowski in a lawsuit involving FBI and the discovery of information about the Seth Rich exchange of data with WikiLeaks. And it just came out today that the FBI suddenly found over 20,000 pages of information related to Seth Rich. And they also had his computer, and on that computer, they talked about, or at least been reported today, that on that computer was evidence of him passing information, emails from the DNC to WikiLeaks, asking for money for the rest of them or something of that nature. That's basically what Cy Hirsch's conversation was all about, that was recorded by Ed Butowski, I believe, early on, and that was what was posted on the web, and people heard that, and but Cy wouldn't publicly say anything about it because he didn't want to compromise his sources. But what that does, it says that the FBI has known all along, even before the inauguration of President Trump, that the information that WikiLeaks published had nothing to do with the Russians. It had an insider doing that job. Now, we knew that from forensics of the data that was published by WikiLeaks, simply by looking at the last modified times on all the 35,813 emails that were posted. They were all had the same even ending numbers in terms of last modified time. That was clearly a forensic proof that the data was downloaded to a thumb drive or CD-ROM, some memory stick, and then physically transported before WikiLeaks could post it, which said to us it was an inside job. We couldn't say who it was that did it, but we could say it was an inside job, not a hack coming from Russia, extracting data across them. And that was the same, I think it was in January 2017,
Is the video over yet?
Yep.
Okay, fam, it's right there. They have the email. Seth Rich was asking for the balance of the money for bringing over these documents. The FBI knew the whole time. I guess us hanging with guys like Jason Burnbus now makes us look good and stuff. The fact that he was reporting this shit beforehand and stuff because he was looking deep into this stuff. Okay, it's proof. It was Seth Rich. It wasn't the Russians, but the FBI, along with their cronies and the Democratic establishment with the Obamas and the Clintons, let them take the whole country hostage and peddled a Cold War lie. A lie with the other guys who hold on to the other side of the nukes, of all the nukes we're holding in this country. They didn't care, fam. They let them peddle this shit. And the Democratic Party is still peddling it. And that's why they're so desperate to fix this election and get Joe Biden in there, because they know if they don't, it's their ass. Somebody should go to jail. Who ordered the hit to whack Seth Rich? It was the Democratic Party, the establishment, and the Republican establishment that had a piece to play in this and stuff like that. Totally disgusted. They got busted, and people should be singing this shit from the rooftops. We now know for a fact it was Seth Rich.
But it's never going to be for a fact, Basta, because you're never going to be able to prove that because you have, you're not in power, right? Like the power, it's like the same thing with election fraud. It's like, it's real, this is true, but you can't 100% show people the evidence that they want because you can't look into those machines. You don't have the power to do these things. So it's really unfortunate. And it's really even more unfortunate because I've interacted with people still that mock this. Ooh, Seth Rich, that's conspiracy. I think Sam Cedar's show and a bunch of other neo-progressives were talking about, the Seth Rich
David
shit,
Atkins
that's all
hit me up on that
conspiracy.
shit.
And it's that it's fake and all this stuff, but it's like, no, everything surrounding this man's death was completely, at the very least, suspect. You're not going to tell me that it wasn't. And a lot of people were so scared to even say that because of all the backlash. Well, I think we're at a time where we need to have more people on who know about this stuff. Like, I want to have people on to talk about the Great Reset. This is something that the left hasn't really touched at all. Save, Slow News Day, Action for Assange, and some of these people. But besides that, it's seen as like a conspiracy, as a QAnon thing. But I think if we can have a deep dive into it and discuss and bring people on who can specify exactly what we're talking about here, then that's a good thing. And I think more people are going to be willing to talk about these things that are a little bit more taboo still, right? Like just like how 9/11 was an inside job, was such a taboo topic to talk about a few years ago. Now it's like so many people are talking about it.
Yeah. Well, they're already in place, fam. They have all their defense mechanisms set up. I talked to somebody, we talked about David Atkins when I was talking to him about this whole situation with Russiagate, and I mentioned Bill Binney. He went right to smearing Bill Binney. It's like, oh my God, this guy is like a very well-known guy in the NSA, very well-respected across the board, and now you just want to smear the messenger. It's really, really terrible. And that's what all these Democrats have. Most of the Democrats, minions I call them, they're not uninformed. They're just so misinformed. And they think with emotion, whatnot, and everything, and they think their ends justify the means. So no matter what, they'll spew that lie to defend themselves or defend their position and defend the Democratic Party, which doesn't deserve to be defended. Johnny, run this clip from 4:57 through 8:25. We'll wrap it up in one shot. This is Bill Binney talking about election fraud and ballot clustering. Something I want people to understand what ballot clustering is, because it really did take place in this last election. Go ahead, Johnny.
So, and the election fraud, this is the other issue I wanted to address. About June of this year, we sent, I think it was 54 registered letters to all the secretaries of states of all the states in the United States and Guam and Puerto Rico and two others, saying that there are ways to fix the and validate and rely on a real outcome of accurate count of any voting process, and we would love to talk to you about it. Well, we heard from 0 of them. None of them responded whatsoever. And so now this vote came along, and you see this video, people stuffing ballots into the voting system after hours after they threw everybody else out. Why? They didn't want them to notice that, but they didn't realize they were being photographed by a camera all the time. So after they threw the witnesses, the press, and the Republicans out to monitor the voting counts, after they threw them out, they pulled these things out from under the table and started throwing them in the machine. Well, so if you went back and we were advocating looking at bulk information on those ballots and also using things like census, U.S. phone white pages, yellow pages, Social Security dead lists of dead people, and also those who have Social Security numbers and so on, and using all that data, just crunching it together and saying, here's the reliable, valid data of all eligible U.S. voters in the country. And so we could, by polling place, say, here are all the eligible voters that can come in and vote in your country. And if we had taps on all the voting as it occurred, we could monitor that as it occurred in real time, not after the fact. Or none of this late counting or that crap. Everything would be done right there. And it would be done once for every valid person, no matter where they were living, in what state or whatever. They could have moved, they could be in different places, but they were allowed to vote one time. And that we could have figured out. And so we went and started looking at some of this data that some of us had access to, and we found that in the case of, and I tweeted this out, in the case of Georgia, there were almost 2 million people with the same birth date of 1 January. Different years, but the same birth date. Now, if you just said, okay, there should be an equal number of people born on any given day of the year, that's 365 times almost 2 million, which is like 730 million people must live in Georgia. So that tells you there's something wrong there, but that doesn't say these people are guilty or anything, and these ballots are bad. It says you need to look at them to verify. Now, you look at other things like clustering and a time of input, like those people that input all those files after they threw everybody out and then started throwing these ballots from under the table into the vote counting machines, they should cluster in time. And if that happened, then a cluster in time showed that commonality with all these birth dates of 1 January, then this is just more additional evidence of fraud.
Okay.
All right, so that's Bill Binney, the ex-NSA worker. I don't know, NSA employee. I don't know what you want to call him nowadays. He was in the NSA, and he started an organization with a bunch of other people who worked in intelligence to call out the deep state or the unelected officials, whatnot. And he talked about ballot clustering here. And this is why we talk about, the fact that it's all about really receiving that data, right? I mean, the whole thing that Raji Raw's been fighting for is to get the data. All the data belongs to us, the people, because we fund these elections. Yet they deny us this data. Why? Because they're hiding something. Right. Now, when it comes to clustering, he's talking about the middle of the night when you take all these big ballots and you throw them in the machines in big clusters is what they're calling, because it's called a cluster fuck. It's an old military term. Now, the way we can check a lot of these clusters is to see the date of birth. Now, I do want to point out when people go, oh, there's so many people with a date of birth of 000, whatnot. When you remake a ballot, there were people who back in the days didn't have to give their date of birth to register to vote. So therefore, they would make it with those dates and whatnot. Now, that is okay, and as long as it's spread out. But that's why he wanted to check the clusters, because he could find out right away if they were trying to remake these ballots. You know what I'm saying? A lot of dates would match up where it would have that same old school date. But once again, they don't let us into the data. They don't let us look at what's going on. They purposely keep us out. That's why I put this tweet over here from Mr. Barnes, from Barnes Law. Now, I don't agree with this guy on a lot of things at all, Robert Barnes, but right here, this is what he says. If this election was so clean and pure, why refuse an independently modern signature match audit? That's mainly he's talking about Georgia. He's talking about Wisconsin, or an independently modern vote count, which he's talking about Michigan. He's talking about Georgia, or he even published the digitalized ballots across the board, right? Now, the Fulton County Court won't even schedule the Trump election contest for a hearing. That's what they do, fam. They don't let us in. They could figure this stuff out right away. It wouldn't take them too long. We have all the means necessary. We have a way of looking at the ballots to make sure they're legit. We have a way of counting the digital image to make sure they're legit. We have a way of verifying the signatures. If we looked into the software, we can make sure and see if there was any fugaziness going around. There's so many different ways we can check these elections, and we can make sure that they're sound and accurate. They won't let us do it because, once again, the way the elections are set up, they're set up for fraud, and they're set up to self-validate. Get the ballots into the machines, get them quick, get them closed, seal the data, and call it a day, and just tell the mainstream media to say Joe Biden won fair and square. He didn't win fair and square. It's disgusting what happened this election. These mathematical anomalies that happened in the middle of the night, they had all the ways and the means to do this and stuff like that. And if we're leftists, we're true leftists who believe in election integrity, we have to call this shit out across the board. We have to demand audits. We have to demand transparency. And we have to demand that we, the people, get that vote count accurately right.